Next up, we're going to talk about creating forms with HTML. So HTML provides a whole bunch of different types of form controls, the individual inputs, so things like checkboxes, text fields, but also things like drop-down menus, lots and lots of different options, including buttons. How did I forget that? We're going to see how to make all of those, and we're going to learn more about how the actual form element works as well. There's an element called the form, which I'm actually going to defer and cover in a couple of videos from now, because we need to start by understanding the elements that go inside of a form. But if we take a look at any web page, any modern web page, it's very likely we're going to encounter forms. Here's GitHub's marketing page. There's a search form there. There's another form here to sign up for GitHub. If I click sign up, here's a form. It's a very fancy, different type of form, but that is a form. Or if I go to sign in, here's a form. And it's not just the controls, the button, the password field, the username field, but also if I inspect this, we can see there is an actual element called form that contains all of this stuff. So we're going to come back to the form element in a bit. We need to start by understanding what goes inside of a form. How do we make a button? How do we make a text field? That's what we're going to see in this video. The first thing we'll look at is a new element called input. Input is incredibly versatile. It is a self-closing element, just like an image. There is no closing tag. There is no content, no text that goes in between the tags because there is no second tag. It's simply input, and then a very special attribute that has to be there called type. And we'll start by setting type equal to text. This will make us a very basic text field. So if I go to my document, I've deleted everything, pretty much just an empty HTML skeleton. I'll put a little H1 that says form controls or something like that. And then I'll add my input element, type equals text. And that goes inside the input tag, right? There's no closing tag, it's just input. Now let's take a look in the browser. Here's my page. I'll refresh, and this is what we see. A nice empty text field. I can type in there, and so far that's all we can do with it. It's just a text field. So that's our first official form control. The next thing that I'll show you is how to make a button. So to make a button, we have an element called button. So the button element does actually have a closing tag, and that's because we specify the text of the button in between the opening and closing tags. So when we work with a input element, there's no text to specify because there's no content, right? There's nothing that we're trying to put inside of that input. We're just saying it's a text field. But when we make a button, the button has some text on it, basically a label saying what the button is. So if we look at this sign in button, it says sign in. If we look at, how about on Mozilla Developer Network, here is a button that says get MDN+. That's the text. So to make a button, the element is called button, the tag is button, opening and closing. We don't have to add in this type equals submit. We'll learn a bit more about that too when we cover forms. But let me show you an example, our first button. So opening tag, closing tag, and text in the middle. And whatever that text is, find my web page and refresh. There we are. It says our first button. So we get some default styles. It's not particularly attractive. We'll learn how to make a button look more like this or more like that. But for now, it works. It is a button. It is a button. Also, notice that they are inline elements, right? They share the space. So I could have a whole bunch of buttons, and they're not going to force any other buttons onto a separate line. They are all inline. So they take up the least amount of space possible. Compare that to an H1, right, which forces this stuff onto its own line. We talked about that a couple videos ago. And that is it for this video, our first official, very, very basic form controls. We saw input, type equals text, that makes us a text field, and then button, opening and closing tag, put something in it, and that makes us a lovely button.